Hey everyone, welcome to the Music Pro Services podcast. How to stay creative when motivation disappears is what I want to talk about on this episode. It's something that a lot of musicians and artists struggle with, or they go through a period. It's not all the time that we have a creative spark, and it's something that we expect to have all the time as creatives and artists, but it doesn't happen all the time. So what do we do to actually alleviate this issue, or what do we do to be creative all the time? Well, one thing is that creativity is something that can happen in waves, right? So it's an up and down or an in and out sort of thing. And we as artists, we're expecting to stay motivated all the time, always feel productive, and always feel excited to create. Now, that often for some people doesn't happen, or often it does for some other artists. But when you're not feeling that sort of creativeness, everything feels a bit forced. But when everything is feeling a bit forced, that's when inspiration disappears, self-doubt starts to kick in. Whereas when you're in the zone and you're creative, in that phase, it's like nothing can stop you. You're coming up with these beautiful things and these fantastic sort of creative pieces of work, and it's all just flowing, right? Now, one thing that we need to establish to actually alleviate these blockages and that creative sort of lull that we sometimes have is, and we have to really acknowledge that motivation is not constant, right? So one of the biggest misconceptions about creativity is that successful artists are constantly creating and they're doing it 24/7, and they wake up from sleep and this pieces just come to mind and everything like that, and that is all good and well, and that sometimes just does happen. But if you're working as a creative full time and you're doing it all the time, we can become enclosed into this little bubble of non-creativeness. So, and that also sort of like connects to the motivation, and the motivation sort of like disappears, right? But yeah, motivation is not constant. So you need to really be aware of the fact that, you're probably gonna have some lulls and everything like that. But when we do, what is it due to? Is it due to just not being creative, or is it due to something else? Talking from my own experience is that lack of motivation, it seems like is due to something, right? And finding that something is a challenge in itself to actually for you to continue your work, and that you think it's burnout or something else, or you're not just feeling it, you're not in the zone, or there are some other things happening in life that are causing it. Sometimes burnout does look like lack of motivation, right? And burnout is a major thing, especially for us in the music industry, where you've lost some of that creativity. You're feeling you're feeling the anxiety, and you're feeling that you can't perform as well as you did. It could be due to burnout. Now, burnout is a quite serious thing, whether you're an artist or not, and it can affect what you're creating and how you're performing and what you're doing just in day-to-day life. So when you're balancing your career as an independent artist, you're balancing a lot of things. So you're possibly balancing new releases, recording, creating. On top of that, you're probably gigging live, so you're concentrating on probably rehearsals, where your next gig is, whether you're going to get enough tickets sold, whether you're going to you're ready for it, whether and that all builds up into anxiety, and it's exhaustion as well. So it can exhaust you. So you need to really be aware of, that burnout phase. To counteract that, you need to really, really, really balance out what you're doing. You need to rest, and this also is a really good way to get back into creativity. Just to rest and see if you can not do anything at all for a period of time. And I'm not talking about days, but maybe have a day rest, at least. Have some space around you where, don't even concentrate on what you're doing creatively or music wise. Maybe just go out for a walk or do something that is not connected to music. And you have to have a good balance of what you're doing. When you come back to do things, make sure it's in a way, in a strategic way where I'm not feeling that I can do this or this well. So don't force it. Just drop everything, do what you can. And sometimes, there are deadlines in place and everything like that, but you'll find that you'll be a bit more productive if you leave a bit of space and rest, right? And then see it, if you can, from a different perspective. What I'm trying to say is that look at what you're doing from outside of the box. So if you're spending a lot of time creating one thing, just maybe stop and say, all right, look, it's not going anywhere and I'm spending a lot of time. What else can I do instead of creating to actually, use my time more wisely? And you'll find that your self-confidence will start to build, because then you'll feel like, all right, look, you know what? I'm probably gonna just play a bit of music and just do that and just rehearse my stuff. Or maybe do a bit of marketing for your next gig or your next release, just so you can counteract that balance, right? So it's very important not to be burnt out. It's very easy to do, but it's very important not to do it. And what I've just explained has helped me in regards to getting burnt out. Now, I do a number of things. I produce, I record, I teach guitar, I perform, and I have a couple of projects on the go, and you need to balance all of that out, because if you don't, you'll get burnt out. Now, the other thing is that you don't, and that was a good segue as well, because you don't always need to feel inspired to create. Sometimes it's just, you know what, I'm just going to grab my instrument, whether it's a guitar or piano, and just doodle and just play for about maybe 15 minutes and just see what happens. You'll find that the energy sort of like shifts. It shifts from being up into, oh my God, a panic state where you're working to create. And that often shifts where you're actually creating to work. So it's a funny thing when you pick up an instrument and you feel the vibrations of what you're doing. That can automatically turn a negative into a positive. Maybe up on top of that, just record on your phone or just record some stuff and just listen to it back and just say, all right, well, maybe I can use that, maybe I won't use this, or, but you're actually, you're boosting the creative side of your mind, of your soul. Experiment, maybe, try a different instrument, try something else, maybe even try, I know I've done some experimentations just drumming on different sort of things to get some sounds, and it depends on what you're doing, of course, but it can shift your perspective of creating actual sounds, not music, but sounds, where, it can give you a different take on things. And also just maybe listen differently. And this is one thing that I've trained to do myself, just to listen to things differently. You'll listen to some songs, or you'll listen to some people play at first, sort of like what they call like first glance, or at face value, and you think, oh, okay, yeah, that's okay. But we don't really delve into listening. So if you can listen to it a bit differently, and what I do when I listen to it differently, what I mean by that is maybe just analyze a little bit. what's happening in the first maybe 4 bars, what's happening in that verse, or what's happening in that chorus, where is it all, where is the beauty coming from in this particular song, or maybe study some lyrics a bit more. That can a lot of the times just give you that springboard back into the creativeness and say, oh well, look, now that's the approach. Maybe I'll try it, but in my own way, in my own fashion, right? The other thing which I've mentioned before is a comparison. Comparison actually decreases motivation. That's speaking from experience, because sometimes you're comparing yourself to something or someone that is in a different realm or different thing than what you are. It's not necessarily a different level or a better or even or excellent or not that good. It's just in a different state, right? You're a different person. You're a different soul. Everyone's got their uniqueness. So when you start to compare and when you start to judge and judging other people and judge yourself, that's when motivation starts to go down. That's what I found with myself. And I've worked a lot on myself to actually change that. So, and that is actually helping me create, because when I think that, you know what, this is me, there are no boundaries in my creation. And that has helped me, especially in the last couple of years, of not comparing. And I've produced some really cool stuff and created some really good stuff, and I feel really good about it. And to me, it feels constant. So that comparison, if you can, minimize it, get rid of it if you can. You're your own person, right? The other thing that I wanted to mention that will help with the creativeness and the motivation is to reconnect with why you started. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing? If you go back and you put yourself in that time where you first started to create and you think, geez, I felt really good then. Why was it that you were doing it? You'll often say, the answer to that, and this is my answer to what I felt when I'm creating, is that I'm in my own world, sort of thing, and it can be a very utopia sort of world where you're creating because there's no boundaries, there's no rules, there's not anything really, and that is a really good place to be, because especially with everything that's happening at the moment, where everything's a systematic approach. When you're creating, it's just creating. You're not in there for to actually put together, a certain thing. Like if you're going out to build a garden, you're out there to build a garden. Or if you're going to be, fixing a car, you're fixing a car for that purpose, to actually drive it. But with the creation, it can happen. It's open. So it's very exciting to see what you're going to come up with every single moment of that creating period. So that, up on top of learning a few things, and whether it's a new instrument or whether you're learning a different approach in that creation process, that is probably why we create, to be in that state of, geez, this is really sounding good, and then you're not thinking about anything else, and it's a really positive state. And that's whether you're really technical on a piece of in a piece of musical work, or you're just flowing in that creativeness. It's a really good place to be in. So that's the reason why I do it. But again, for you, it might be a different reason. For other people, it might be different reasons. But you got to know the why. Why are you doing this? Why do you need to be creative? Why are you being an artist? And that's a very, very profound question that you can ask yourself. The other thing is consistency. Being consistent doesn't mean perfection, right? You don't have to be always doing things and being perfect at the same time, right? A lot of artists think that consistency means that, you create at maximum intensity all the time. No, you can't do that. You'll go back to being burnt out, right? Long-term consistency is more suitable and more sustainable. Sometimes it just simply means that, you stay connected to music, create small things, have a bit of a break within the day. Do it slowly. Sometimes, you're creating things slowly. Like, you know what? I've done one line I've written a line of lyrics. Something's not happening, or, you're getting a blockage. Don't worry about it. Have a coffee, or, come back to it, even the day after. It just shows that you're not giving up, right? You're not completely giving up. Whereas if you try to be continuous, and you're just striving to be have that maximum consistency all the time, you're going to get burnt out, and then chances are you probably won't finish what you're doing anyway. But you will feel exhausted, and you will feel that the motivation is at a minimal. Whereas if you do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you go in, I'm going to add a couple of chords here just to see how it is, and then I'm just going to write a bit more of the lyrics here, and then I'm going to go and grab a coffee, and then it's less demanding, it's less intense, and I think for some people, and for me, that works more often than not for me. So especially when I'm producing and I'm arranging, and all these layers are coming in and all these instrumentations are coming in, I need to have a bit of a break from it, because I need my mind to recoup. So it needs to absorb everything that I've done, and then I come back and then I make some changes or I add some things, and it's a bit more fresh. So you can't go, maximum intensity all the time. You'll just burn out. But at the end of the day, motivation disappearing doesn't mean that you've failed, right? It's not a failure. You're just in a bit of a lull, or in a bit of a phase where you need to bring yourself out of it. And hopefully with what I've talked about on this podcast, it'll help. Creativeness also, it changes over time. So the more mature you get, or the more involved you get into your project or into someone else's project, you're gonna figure out things, how to do things, and why it is that you're doing it. And it's very important to be aware of that, because that'll help with your motivation and creativeness going forward, what to do, what not to do, right? The important thing is how to stay connected to music and to your creativeness. Even during the quieter periods and more difficult, I suppose, periods that one can have, how do we still stay connected, and how do we, still manage to do things? And hopefully what I've discussed today actually helps you and helps you be aware of how to approach things, and how to approach the disappearance of creativity at points. But it's always there. We just need to actually give it a bit of a boost. And hopefully with everything that I've said about what I've talked about in this podcast, it will help. And if it has, put a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't. And if you'd like to get in touch, musicproservices.com is the website. Deal with music production, mentoring, as well as guitar lessons. So yeah, hit me up or on the socials as well. But until next time, ciao.